Hey guys, how you doing? Today what we are going to do is building a custom filterable dropdown in React.js. So as you can see, this is my dropdown. I have list of items here, and I can search something like test 5 to, as you can see, the items will be filtered and you can select whatever that you want, and you see the result of your selection, which is 2. That is the value of test2 option in my dropdown. So let's start coding to see how you can do it without using any third-party library. Okay, I removed almost everything from the project, so we start together. I just have a select component.js. It's a simple React.js component with some props. We haven't used them, and a simple text that you know what is it about, of course, and the app.js file, which is the root component of my app. I have a list of array which is for my items, test1, test2, yeah, and here I have an state for, let me close it, selected option, set selected option. In this state variable, I'm storing the current selected item of my dropdown, which is empty for now, and just a heading, the select component is used. We wrote it here, so we used it here, and the selected option that you can see, there is not any selected option right now. Okay, to start, I have list of my options. Inside the options variable, placeholder, and unchanged function. Whenever there is a change in my dropdown, this function should be called so the app.js can be updated. And the selected key, which is the current value of the dropdown, and open and set open. Open means is the dropdown already expanded or not, and the set open is a function that whenever we want to expand it, we call this function to expand it. Okay, let's start from here. It can be my root div. I'm gonna name it class name dropdown container, and within it I'm going to have another div, class name input container for my input element, and within it I will have two children here. The first one is the input itself, and the other one is going to be the arrow, the down arrow. When the user clicks on it, he will see the list of items. So let's add it. Input type should be, of course, text. Value should be input value. Let's define a state here, const my input value, and another parameter which is my function to change the input value. So I'm name it set input value and use state hook, and the default value of my state should be empty. So I pass input value as a value to my input element, and placeholder, I'm gonna pass the placeholder that I get it from props and the unchange event. So for unchange, what we can have here is define a function const on input change, and then we get the event and set the input value from event.target.value. So let's pass it to my input component. Yeah, we already have the search or filter input element inside our project. And let's add our arrow. I'm going to use a div and then a class name to it. I should have input arrow container, and inside it I'm gonna use another place for my arrow. I will be using the I tag, and it's gonna be something like input arrow. Just it, and let's close it. So we also can use some icons, but I'm gonna use CSS only to create my drop down icon. Let me show you how I'm going to do this. I go to the style.css file. I define my class, input arrow container, and another one for my input arrow itself. And for input arrow we are going to have a border solid black, and border width should be 0 3 pixel 0, and display should be inline black. Padding should be 3 pixel. Transform should be translate Y 45 degree. And the last thing is for WebKit. Transform, yeah, and do the same. It's for just browser compatibility. This part of code you don't need to memorize it actually, because you can just search in Google how to create a arrow pointing to the downside, so you can find this part of code and copy and paste it inside your project. So as you can see, my arrow is ready, but it should be placed here. So let me define a style for my input container. I should set the position of it to relative, and then apply this one as a absolute position. Input container, it should be relative, and I'm going to set the width to 100% of its parent, and then inside my container let's set the position to absolute. Yeah, set the right property something like 10 pixels from right, and set the top property 50% actually, and the transform should be translate Y again and minus 50%, and a margin top minus 2 pixel, and we should set also the cursor to be pointer. You can see it's working fine, but it is here. Why? Let me check. Yeah, I think we need to define the style for my input. Let's do it. My input element should use all the space of its parent. It's already not does. Okay, let's do drop down container input element with 100%. Yeah, that's it. And let's add another styling, padding to 0. Yeah, and border width to 1 pixel, height to 36 pixel. Yeah, padding left to 10 pixel maybe. Yeah, and box sizing to be border box. Now let's go for our options and create a div for my options. Next to it, div, I'm gonna name it class name, can be drop down and I'm gonna render my options using a map function, option an arrow function here to render it. So basically I'm going to use a div to render each element. Option.value should be here because for every option we have a key and value property. So I will be using option.value here. I need to add some stuff here to my div. First of all, I should set the key because in React we need to specify the key when we render in a loop. So option.key is fine. Unclick. Class name. To apply some styles, I will be using option, and yeah, that's it. For unclick function, we need a function to actually select the item when your user press on it. So let's write it. Const on item selected. It takes the item as argument, option, and we need to first check if the unchange is provided by the parent component or not. So if it is not undefined, then apply this for me, unchange, call this one, and pass the option.key to my parent unchange function. And the other thing is unchange undefined, then set input value of option.value. So we will add the value of my drop down to my text box. And the other thing is setting is open, set open actually to false, because when the user press on each item in my list should be closed. So let's use it. Actually we should use it in this way, option. What the issue is, oh, we have to have a return here, and for this one option is not defined. Yeah, it's opt. You can see my options are added here, but they are not very good. Let's define some style for them. Option, set the height 36 pixels, same as its input. Border bottom 1 pixel, solid black. Set the display to flex because I want to make it center using align items center. Padding the left should be 10 pixel, same as its input. Cursor should be pointer, so I see the pointer, and a background color as white. This is good, but we need a border for here, and we don't need to push elements after it because it should be as an overlay, as a pop-up, open and close, and doesn't change my label location. I can add a hover style also to change the background color just to royal blue. So it's working fine. We need to define a CSS rule for my dropdown, so let's do it here. Set a border 1 pixel, solid black. Border bottom should be none. We don't need any border at the bottom side. Box sizing, border box, and position should be absolute. Yeah, so I need to set the width to be 100% of its parent. So the parent should be set. The dropdown is located inside my dropdown container. So let's define its style as well here. With we already defined it somewhere. Yeah, just set a position to relative and remove this one. Yeah, it's working fine. The other thing that is needed is the clear button. I will be adding it here same as my arrow. So let's rename it to something like input clear container, and we just add the X letter here as our icon. Input clear container should be position absolute. Yeah, right should be something like 30 pixel. Top should be 50%, and of course we need again transform to translate y minus 50%. Yeah, and cursor should be pointer. Because we need to hide our dropdown, let me apply a quick change to this class name dropdown. Yeah, here I set display to none, and then I can add another class name dropdown visible, set display to black. So here I can apply a conditional rendering like this. Dropdown should be there always, and I want to check if it's open, then add the visible class to it, otherwise nothing. Yeah, we also need to hide this part when there is nothing inside it, so let's apply a conditional rendering here as well. Selected key or input value. If these two things or one of them existed, then we can show it, otherwise we render null. Yeah, it shouldn't be shown here, but when I add something I should be able to see it. And we need a function also for this one. On click clear drop down. Let's define it here, clear drop down, and here I want to set input value to empty, and unchanged function also should be called to update until the parent at the input is cleared. Yes, so it's working fine, but our menu is not working still. Let me add a function, onClick function, for every area of this place. If I click it, then I should see the list of my items. So I'm gonna add my onClick function to this and name it on input click. Const on input click, then set open. We're actually going to toggle it, so previous value should be toggled like this. Okay, this has error because set open is not defined yet. Forget it for now. I can go to my app.js file and define it here. Const open and set open, use state, default value should be false to be close. Open and set open. So as you can see, it's working fine, but there is a problem. When I click outside, it doesn't automatically close. We will go later at the end of video to fix this issue, but let's now focus on the dropdown and its functionality now. Yeah, you can see I can select items and I can remove them. The selected option will be shown here, but for example, if here I set a default value to my component as, for example, 1, it doesn't show it inside my dropdown, so I have to fix it and show the first option, which is test1, as the default selected item. How can we do this? It's so easy. We can use use effect hook here to achieve this. Let me show you. Use effect, it accepts first a function to apply the change, and second a dependency array. When these variables inside this array changing, the first function, this one, will be executed. So I want to listen to the selected key. When there is a change for it, it should change the value of my input. So I can do like if selected key exists, then set input value. First go and find the option, options, find the one that its key is equal to my selected key, and then set the value of it to my dropdown. As you can see, it's working fine now, and if I change it to 2, the second one will be shown here. We have a small warning. It's related to a condition of my ESLint. I should add every dependency that I used, so I should add options to my list, but because my options variable not going to change, it doesn't make any difference in my logic here. So it is time to apply improvement. When we click outside, we close the dropdown. To achieve this, I'm going to use this code snippet. I downloaded it from Stack Overflow. It's just a HOC structure in React. You don't need to be familiar with it, but just to recap, it has a state in it. We actually going to remove the open state and put it inside this component. It also creates a new reference, and here it gets my component, which is going to be my select component, will be passed to this one, and then it render it again, but it will add some props to it and a functionality. So it will add all the props that are sent, as well as these 3 props, which is ref, set option, and option. So I have a use effect here. When the ref is set, we define a new event listener for mouse down. When the mouse is down, this function will be called, and if checks if the reference doesn't contain the target, then it set the open to false. So when I click outside, it will be closed. To just using it, we have to apply a quick change here. Instead of exporting directly my component, I first send my component to with click outside and then export it. Let's import it. Yeah. So the set option and open will be passed to it. We also need to remove them from here. Actually, when I call this component first, this one will be called, and then this one will be located inside with a click outside component. The other change which is required here is sending this reference variable to my component and set it to my root div here. To achieve this, we cannot directly send the ref variable as a prop. We have to use React forward ref hook for this purpose. So I get the ref, it's not defined yet. I change this section to use first React forward ref, and here the first parameter is my normal props, which is going to be this one, and the second parameter is ref that we passed it from here. Exactly here we passed the ref. Here, if you remember, we are sending the ref to my component, but we cannot do it using prop to add another prop for ref and attach it to my root div inside my dropdown component, because it's not possible in React for refs. We have to use another approach to forward refs, which is called a React forward ref hook, and we have to do this. We have to put everything inside forward ref, and we get the ref here as a second parameter. So the first parameter is prop and the second one is ref. Then here we can use ref to set it to my div. So by doing this, my with click outside component is connecting to the ref. Yeah, we can remove this, and let's try. If I click outside, yeah, you can see it will be closed, but if I click inside it, it won't be closed. Why it is closed? Because we have this logic here to set open false when an item is selected. If I comment it, you can see that it's not getting closed. So that's it. The other functionality which can improve my dropdown is when I remove my input text and I click outside, I want to my select option become null or empty, because actually there is nothing selected, but my parent component is thinking that the third item is selected. So let's tell the parent component, whenever we remove everything from here and we click outside, set it to null. How we can achieve this? Using another use effect. So my function, my dependency array, and within it I want to check if the dropdown is not open, and so it means it is closed, and options find index, let's see, option value equals to input value equals to -1. It means that there is no any option which is matched with my input value text. Here we are checking the dropdown is not open, and also if nothing is matching with what we put inside our text box. So first, if there is no any input value, it means it's empty. We are calling the onChange from parent to say to him that my component is empty. So if I remove it and press outside, you can see that the value is also removed. We also need to check in the else condition if selected key existed, So we set the input value to the selected key. We can do options, find option dot key equals to input value, and then use its value. It is the same as we did inside another use effect that we had, and inside the else set input value to empty string. So let's add all the things that are required inside my dependency array. So I just copy and paste it. What is left? Oh, they shouldn't be in a string, sorry. Yeah, they shouldn't be in a string, so it is fine now. The other thing that we are going to do is filtering the items based on what we write here. So to do this, before calling the map function to render elements, we can filter them. Filter takes the item, and we have our function. If we return true, the item will be passed from our filter and will be shown, otherwise it will be filtered. So let's make everything lowercase. Search item is going to be input value to lowercase, const v item dot value dot to lowercase again for my value, and if search term doesn't exist, then return true, so everything should be shown to the user, otherwise return v start with search item. If the start characters of v matches with my search item, there will be passed and will be shown. We have a spelling problem here, yeah. Okay, let's see if it's working or not. Test 1 2 3 4. Yeah, it's working fine and properly. Yeah, my dropdown is complete, but we can later add some features and improvement to it. For example, searching data from API or other options. If you think this video was helpful for you, please leave it a like and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Have a great day.